What story do you really want to tell but no one has asked the right question for you to bring it up? A few years ago I was working at a pretty miserable place. When I got off work it had begun to rain and I had no umbrella. The crosswalk was red and there wasn't any shelter from the rain nearby. So I just stood there getting soaked, desperately wishing I could be home. A couple of drunk middle-aged dudes came up waiting to cross the street. I didn't look them in case they got rowdy, but one of the men looked at me and handed me his umbrella. I tried to refuse but he said, "Your head is more precious than mine." Then the light turned green and he stumbled along sharing his friend's umbrella. It was a simple and incredibly kind gesture that made me feel like I mattered. I still have the umbrella and I'll never forget the moment a drunk old man cheered me up during a dark time. I also hope he didn't regret losing the umbrella after he sobered up. It was a really nice one. Edit. Got some questions asking where, and it was an S. Korea. P. Thank you for your story. I really enjoyed it. My grandfather was working on a US Navy base during WWII as a welder, civilian. When he got his draft letter, he took it to the admiral on base to let him know that he'd be leaving. The admiral called FDR and explained that my grandfather was the best welder he had and that his effort towards the war would be better served if he stayed working in his current role. My family still has a letter from the president to my grandfather commending him for his work and excusing him from the draft so long as he continued working at the base. Wow, that's incredible. Reminds me of the time one of the Bushes sent my mom a letter when she asked him if he wanted to buy some Girl Scout cookies. He sent a letter back stating that he already got some from his daughter, but he thanked her for asking. I think she has it framed somewhere. My great grandma used to be the secretary for the FBI when it first came into place and was given 3 letters from the leader of the FBI at the time. One for joining, one for getting married, and one for leaving the FBI for retirement. I definitely understand how cool it is your family members got pointed out about the hard work they did by important people. My grandmother's house had a row of peony bushes in the landscaping. They were in full bloom, deep pink and white, and you could smell them across the yard. My grandma was busy hanging sheets on the clothes line. The peonies smelled so tempting that 6-year-old me just couldn't resist. I walked over to the peonies. My grandma yelled not to pick them, and I leaned over and took a big exaggerated whiff. I felt something that can only be described as what it would feel like if bugs were crawling all over my nose and throat and getting into my mouth. Because they were. The peony I smelled so deeply was covered in ants. What must have been 50 ants flew up my nose and down my throat. So now, I hate the smell of peonies. Ants do love them peonies. It was a beautiful night. Full moon and a sky full of stars. I was contemplating all while tying a noose to kill myself. I was at peace with the decision. Couldn't cope any longer with life. I was putting it around my neck when my best friend calls me. He straight asked if you could drink milk. Do you think you would have a favorite milkshake? And if yes, do you think it would be strawberry? It was so incredibly, beautifully random. We ended up talking for 2 hours on that phone call. I cried in silence while he talked. And until today he has no clue about this and that he pretty much saved my life. I'm glad you got that phone call and that you're here to tell the story. I hope you're in a better place now. Looking back, I'm incredibly thankful for it. Go out to lunch with him and order a strawberry milkshake. This is a story from a through hike I went on this past summer. I was over 3 weeks into a month-long hike and I was starting to have major motivation problems. It was a rainy day and I decided F it. I'm not going to wear any rain gear because you just get hot in addition to being soaked. I climbed to the top of a lookout point and met a man with his 2 teenage children. He's super funny and nice, and we hit it off and chat for a bit. He asks me about what I'm eating and how my hike is going. After weeks of being mostly solo most of the time, it's so good to talk with a good conversation partner. But it's storming and we are high up, so we shortly part ways. Anyways, the next day of my hike is brutal. My gear is still damp and my body was not holding up as well as I hoped. I'm fatigued to my core and I want to be done. But I'm determined to go 15 miles anyways. One of my longer days. Mile 11 to 13 are a beach walk portion. I thought great. That'll be fun. Absolutely not. Walking through tiny beach rocks in hiking boots with a 40-pound back is hard as F. I dumped a full cup of rocks out of my shoes afterwards. I get to the end of the walk and there's a little bridge leading back towards the woods. On the bridge there's a sign that says lowest elevation point of the SHT being the trail. And I'm thinking to myself, I get it. Today is the worst day. God damn it SHT. You bitch. You really know how to kick someone when they are already down. So I keep going and I make it to a road crossing with trail signs on either side. And on the near sign, I see a gas station back full of goodies. In my head, I'm thinking simultaneously no way and that it has to be for me. I get up close to it and in permanent marker, all caps, it says my very uncommon first name. I was speechless. Inside there was a full-sized bag of kettle chips, a 24-ounce Coke, an apple, and an orange. The kindly man I spoke to asked me what food I missed most and how far I was going. I said potato chips and 15 miles. He delivered. Best day on the trail. I don't usually drink pop, but that Coke, still a little cold, was maybe the best thing I ever tasted. TL. Doctor, I was having a really bad stretch of days on a through hike and a kind stranger gave me an amazing, surprising gift and made my day. That is incredible and heartwarming. My grandfather was committed for alcoholism in the 1940s and stayed several years in a psychiatric hospital. Fast forward 60 years, and I'm touring that hospital for work reasons as I was part of the team planning its replacement. I heard horror stories of how patients were treated in the past. I never told anyone my grandfather was one of those patients. That's really sad. I feel for both of you. Thank you. He passed away more than 20 years ago. He was estranged from his family for many years after getting out. He eventually did quit drinking and lived a long but simple life. He was able to reconnect with most of his family later in life. I didn't know him well, but I do have fond memories of him and can see similarities with family members. My uncle looks a lot like him, and his sense of humor was of a particular kind, and I think I inherited some of that from him. That's great that he was able to eventually reconnect with family and break his addiction. I'm guessing that was not the case for many coming out of that place. I feel like a dork, but here goes. I didn't know what periods were until I had them. So when I was bunking a class, when I was 10, I told my teacher I had a stomach ache, and she asked me if I had periods. To which I said the next period is social studies, and she asked again, and I said the last period was the science period. She said NVM, and told me to go off. The same year, when we were going for a trip from school, when the guide teacher told us we had to take pads, I asked why we had to bring writing pads to my friend. She said sanitary pads, and I said IDK about y'all, but my exam pad is pretty clean. This reminds me of when I had my first period in middle school. I thought I had a bad bladder, and tried all day to hold in my pee. Turns out it was my period. I didn't find out till I went home, and my mom informed me. Wasn't freaked out or anything, but would have rather it been pee. I remember mine, it was start of gym class, and I felt so bloated and had a stomach ache, and I was like WTF, why do I keep leaking pee? But because we were at the outside tennis courts, and I felt so gross, I didn't go to the bathroom until gym was over. I remember sitting on the toilet staring at it, and then I should call mom, lol, she never let us use tampons, so I was so confused when I was offered one. You all have such good awkward stories. I got mine on Christmas, and I was just at home living life, and my mom was like, put this in your underwear, as she handed me a pad. And I just said cool. My story wouldn't have been awkward if my mom could keep her mouth shut and my dad wasn't a weirdo. She had given me the talk and some pads to keep in my backpack. So when I got my period at school, I was prepared. I got home from school and told her, and I asked her not to tell anyone because I was a bit embarrassed. Pretty normal for a 12-year-old. If the story stopped there, it's completely uneventful. But my mom called my dad at work and told him. So then he took it upon himself to stop on his way home and purchase chocolates, flowers, and a goddamn congratulations balloon. Then he gets home and hugs me and tells me he's so proud that his daughter is a woman now. Cringe. It was the most embarrassing moment of my life. The worst part was that my younger brothers were there and started asking a bunch of questions about why dad got me flowers and what we were celebrating. I ended up locking myself in my room for the rest of the night and crying. In hindsight, it's pretty hilarious, and I know my dad was genuinely doing his best to try to make me feel better. But at the time, it was literally the worst moment of my life. I didn't want my dad or brothers to even know I had my period. Not to mention, have a family party to celebrate it.